What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Bumblebee. You read the title, you saw the thumbnail, now you're interested, and now you're here. Take off your coat, stay a while, let's count them down. Here are the top 10 male warriors from history that went through a lot. Kicking off the list at number 10, Sir William Wallace. You've probably heard of this famous Scotsman at some point, you just may not even realize it. Sir William Wallace was born in 1270. His participation in the First Scottish War of Independence rightfully puts him on this list. And if you saw the movie Braveheart with Mel Gibson, you know exactly who I'm talking about. He rose to prominence in 1297 when he organized troops on the battlefield to go against the English army. Now, while some warriors on this list are more physical, and don't get me wrong, Sir William Wallace could easily punch my head off of my body any day, his feat came mostly from a strategic standpoint. Wallace was a motivator, in case you missed the movie. Number 9, Alexander the Great. Considered one of the finest generals to ever live, Alexander the Great, his name is pretty great, you for sure have heard about him at some point or another. The great king conquered most of the world, or what was known of it at the time, and he was young too. He died when he was just 33 years old, but don't let his age distract you. Alexander the Great fought on the front lines of every single battle, instead of other kings who would just watch from the back and eat grapes in their pajamas. He took over huge kingdoms. He took over Persia, India, and of course Egypt. In his 15 years of ruling, he never lost a single battle. He named 70 cities after himself, even naming one after his horse, Bucephala. How he died, we're still trying to figure that out. All we know is that it was in 323 BC, and he drank a bunch of wine, got sick, and then 2 weeks later, was dead. The wine back then was pretty bad though. It wasn't like, oh, Merlot, you do like that whole sniff test. It wasn't like that. It was like in a bucket, it was gross. Number 8, Leonidas. One of the kings of Sparta. If you've seen the classic film 300, remember that one with the whole chest kicking to the big pit thing? That was that movie. Leonidas was the leader of said 300 Spartans. Legend has it he was the last one standing after the Battle of Thermopylae, and he took on hundreds of thousands of Persian soldiers before meeting his own fate. He was the king of Sparta from 490 BC until 480. He lost the battle, but history will continue to tell his story, because it's exactly the type of hero that belongs on this list. Not really hero, just more of like, how did they survive this far and this long? How did they do all this? As soon as Leonidas realized the Persian soldiers had this one, he sent away his entire army. He wanted to save them all. All left, but you guessed it, 300 of them. They vowed to stay with the king until the very end, and so they did. These warriors had massive shields, spears, iron swords, and they used a formation called a phalanx, which was just shields overlapping each other with spears poking out. It's actually really intimidating. I can't imagine actually having to run towards this. No chance. I'd be like, hi, I'm done. Like paintball, I'm like, just put my hand up. I'm like, nah, I'm out, they got me, we're good. Number 7, Julius Caesar. One of the most famous generals in history. Julius Caesar was a military leader who rose up through the Roman Republic, and then once at the top, Rome was never the same. His rule lasted not even a year before his rivals got the best of him. When Caesar was in his mid-20s, he was abducted by pirates. He was on his way to Rome for the island of Rhodes, but when he was taken, Caesar was insulted at how low the ransom fee was. He was encouraging these pirates to jack up his own price. Could you imagine that? He was assuring them they can get a much higher price, and they did. But the thing was, Caesar was also pretty ruthless. After the higher ransom was paid, Caesar went back with some ships and a few choice words. When Caesar was stabbed 23 times, one of the attackers was actually the son of a woman named Servilia. She was one of his many mistresses alongside Cleopatra the 7th. He slept around, and in turn, Servilia's son, Marcus Brutus, helped end the general's life in 44 BC. Number 6, Richard the Lionheart. Richard I, famous for battling Saladin during the Crusades. When he turned 31, he succeeded his father to the throne, and of course there was pressure to produce an heir to the kingdom, but Richard had no interest in dating or settling down with anybody or anything like that. So instead, the role of the queen was taken up by his mother, Eleanor Aquitaine. Richard the Lionheart deserves a spot on this list purely on the fact that he probably met Robin Hood. Yeah, imagine this. At the end of every Robin Hood story, Richard returns to punish John. John in real life, of course, was his brother. He was also kind of the worst. He had Richard imprisoned. Richard had to actually sneak back into his own home in disguise. Remember those days? I had to sneak back into my own house a few times. Little late night rendezvous. You gotta take your time with those sliding glass doors. You almost have to like lift it a bit and then just like move with it. I had 2 dogs too, so that was like Mission Impossible level. Number 5, Alaric the Barbarian. Going back to around 400 CE, this leader was one leading the fall of Rome. Alaric the Barbarian trained in the Roman army and eventually led the Gothic troops. They fought with the Romans, but after Rome divided and all, the Barbarian fought against them. He ruled over the Goths, he was their first king, and then he sacked Rome. So a pretty big couple years there. After Rome, the barbarian moved on to parts of Africa, and while his plans were far from being thwarted, the weather always wins. His ships were destroyed in a storm, so Alaric the Barbarian was forced to admit defeat this time around. Number 4, Spartacus. The famous gladiator, of course we had to talk about him. Born in 109 BC, he joined the Roman army as a wee young lad, but down the road when he tried to leave, he was caught and forced into the life of a gladiator. There's a certain word that I can't say, but he was one of those. He was forced to fight for the name of entertainment, the movie Gladiator. I mean, if you haven't seen the movie Gladiator, watch it. It's a masterpiece. I give it 2 thumbs down. Get it? Because Romans did we got it. We'll move on. He was forced to fight animals and other warriors, but just like he did earlier with the Roman army, he didn't want to fight anymore. He was done. He wanted a way out, especially in these horrible conditions. So come 73 BC, 70 gladiators led by Spartacus himself all made a break for it. They stole weapons from inside and then broke out. I like how I said to watch the movie and then I immediately spoiled the movie. My bad. I mean, you had 21 years, but sorry. Number 3. Genghis Khan. Famous for uniting the tribes of Mongolia in the 12th century, Genghis Khan soon conquered most of the Asian continent. The head count that he and his Mongolian horde reached, I mean, we're talking tens of millions here. It's really hard to do a list of warriors who went through a lot and then also talk about Genghis Khan because he killed so many people. It's really tough to break down how fierce he is without sounding like I'm glorifying the dude. He did most of the fighting on horseback. He would actually use a composite bow or a battle axe. The actual training itself under Genghis Khan's ruling was, as you'd expect, quite brutal. Younger folk would have to learn how to use all types of weaponry. Number 2, Adrian Carton de Wiart. 6 decades and 4 wars later, Adrian Carton de Wiart has survived the impossible multiple times. I gotta throw him on the list because it's more recent, and also listen to this. He's considered one of the most dedicated soldiers of all time because, for starters, after he lost his left hand and left eye, Adrian did not retire. Instead, no, the officer went on to experience 10 more horrible injuries. He cheated death that many times. As World War I broke out in November 1914, Carton was serving with the Somaliland Camel Corps, opposing the forces of the Dervish state. Now, he was shot in the arm first, and then the face, and that's how he lost his eye. But a grim detail shared by Lord Ismay, who served alongside the soldier, said in 1964 the doctor at the time couldn't do anything about his eye, like at all. So he must have been in the worst pain, but still, that was the first injury. He kept going with that eye thing on top of all this. After the incident, Adrian relocated to Europe, where even more action was waiting. He received more gunshot wounds, this time in the head, hands, stomach, groin, leg, ankle, you name it. If that's not inspiring enough, he survived numerous plane crashes and also a broken back. And finally, number 1, Skanderbeg. Named by the Pope as the champion of Christ, okay, Skanderbeg is one of the most important individuals in Albanian history. He was originally raised as a hostage in the Ottoman Empire, but over time he became one of their top military commanders. Now, come 1443, the plan changed. The once captured Skanderbeg turned on the empire. He went back to fighting on the Albanian side. One of his most notable features here was his involvement in the conflict between Islam and Christianity. Because of his training at a young age, he was fearless. He would lead his troops again from the front line. He wouldn't sit back and watch. No one's sitting back and watching on this list, except for you. Hit that thumbs up. If you want to see a piece of history in person, you can see Skanderbeg's sword sitting in a museum in Vienna. So book that flight. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on Bumblebee. I've been your host, Taylor McWaters. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Peace. When Caesar was in his mid-20s, he was abducted by aliens. Alright, I'm just kidding. I want to see what you say.